A couple of small items which I want to get out of the way. Well, there's a very important French actress by the name of Brigitte Bardot, who is constantly in the media because of the fact that she is very, very political and she has her own ideas as to how France should be going. Let me read a small item. I don't think it will require too much in the way of discussion. Brigitte Bardot was convicted of inciting racial hatred for portraying Muslims in a negative light in her best-selling book, A Cry in the Silence. The Paris court said the former film star compared Muslims to invaders, cruel and barbaric. She and her publishing house, Editions du Rocher, were fined $6,050 each to be paid to two anti-racism groups that took them to court. Miss Bardot, 69, who is an ardent animal rights campaigner, was not present for the verdict. In the book, which topped the non-fiction bestseller list last year, she denounced the infiltration of France by Islamic extremists and what she called the Islamization of France. She has been fined on similar charges in the past, but this time the court found that her words could lead a reader to reject members of the Muslim community through hate and violence. Isn't that interesting? Compare that the way we are in America today, where Muslims can say. Any comment on this?
Yeah. Well,
because, these are short items, but if somebody really wants to...
All right, Fran.
Well, the interesting part, as far as I'm concerned, is again the comparison. Here we ridicule anyone who points out another minority or majority in the respect that here our password is all men are created equal and nothing else is important. You can't ridicule anyone. You're not supposed to look down. If you do, you keep quiet about it because it certainly makes you look bad in the eyes of those around you. And should you ever come in contact with these people, the way things are now, you're liable to go and get into an awful lot of trouble. You can even get your brains knocked out.
Herb.
yeah, I want to make a small comment. If you had said it the American pronunciation, Charlie, Brigitte Bardot,
Yeah.
we all would have recognized it. But when you emphasize the French pronunciation, a lot of us were
I'm
lost.
French.
Huh? I know, but
All right.
that's
Very
it.
well known, though. It's a very well known.
Everybody knows
Period,
that.
that's it.
Philip.
Yeah, but the point is, you've got to know who she is. As a young girl, she was a sex pot of the world.
She was
she was
something
So you got to
else.
see, this is a woman
Beautiful woman.
that changed radically as she aged. She
For the
became
better.
an animal rights activist.
I saw her picture lately, and she doesn't look bad at all.
No, but 69 she doesn't.
69 looks good.
They
The point
probably
is,
fixed up her face. or
Was this a
something.
book? The note wasn't clear. Did she write a book?
Yeah, this is
And a
what
book?
they talk about.
And surprising that in France, the book is not is subject to this type of censure.
Well, all of this, the basis for this suit, which she lost, and otherwise got to pay money
Yeah, I
on
know.
it, is the fact that she wrote this in a book, and the book is very, very implicit when it comes to
Well,
Muslims.
I want to finish what I'm saying. In this country, that very rarely happens unless you libel somebody outright. This does not look like libel to
That's
me.
right.
It looks like an opinion. I'm surprised that France, which created freedoms at the time that our country became free, would have suits of that nature.
I'll read this one thing
No,
again.
no.
Just this one sentence.
Yeah.
Additions to, she and her publishing house, Editions de Rocher, were fined $6,050 each to be paid to two anti-racism groups that took them to court. Not necessarily Muslim,
I know
but she
that, but
apparently,
I'm amazed that in France they,
struck a chord.
that this is a matter of legal challenge. That's
Okay, I think, anybody want to talk about
Morris.
it?
Morris.
About how old? About how old?
all. I understand it.
She's 69.
Glad that
He
is.
doesn't listen.
Morris.
Lived there.
She also in the past came out the anti-Jewish statements. She seems to have racist characteristics. The past she came out and-
She's not a racist.
Listen, feel free, Danny and Abby, to join us in any opinion that you may have.
She had to pay money.
Okay,
Okay, so she's a.
Now I get it.
all right, that's a good idea.
All right, the other item that I have here, and for a long time, I've been watching this more or less because of the fact that, students in Japan especially have a special status. If they are allowed to go ahead in their education, then it means, that they're normal. But if for any reason they have failures, then it's a terrible thing. It's almost, well, there can't be anything. Let me read this. Japan's suicides at record high. Suicides hit a record high of 32,082 last year as the economy struggled to emerge from a prolonged slump. It was the second year in a row in which suicides have risen, and the number represented a 1% increase over the 2002 level. Japan and the United States have roughly the same number of suicides. But the United States has more than twice the population of Japan. No religious prohibition exists against suicide in Japan. Historically, it has been seen as a way to escape failure. This is suicide in Japan. Comments?
Fran?
Suicide is failure.
Actually, many years ago, this was a way out. If you lost face,
Carrie, Harry,
carry.
That's it.
You could not bear the shame. So actually, Japan doesn't have half the population of the United States. You can't compare it. And to say they have the same amount of suicides is like comparing a mountain with a molehill.
That's right. Well, that's what
They
the
have
article
lost
said.
face because they can't make it.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I first of all, it's a different society. They're much more rigid. You got family pressure on that you have much more of than you have in the United States and other countries. And that means a lot when you're raised from the very beginning, from the first day, to obey and listen and whatever your parents tell you to do. Otherwise, you're putting them in jeopardy. You're putting their standing in jeopardy. So if they fail, if they're failing as students, they're not failing themselves, the parents, the standing of the parents also failing. So I can see, because of their customs, and because they were raised this way, that it will continue to be higher until they become more and more enlightened and come to America more often to see how many more failures we have that get up off the mat and continue their lives, period.
Is it against the law, is it against the law
Yes.
in this country to kill yourself?
Yes.
No,
Yeah,
how-
they put you in
when somebody is
jail.
dead, what the hell
They
can
put
they
your
do?
body in jail.
Except in the state of Washington, where you can kill yourself.
Depends on the judge.
But that's the state of Washington.
How can they,
Like if you're very, very sick and that there's no question at all about your ever recovering, the doctor is able to determine you can get killed. You can kill yourself. But so far as the as Hebrew tradition is concerned, you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to. It's only God's will, not yours, when it comes to suicide.
Abby.
And so far, wait a minute, and so far as many religions, insurance companies will not pay off on suicide. It's this kind of thing, the psychological
It's in the
factors are
clauses.
diverse. God, Abby?
Well, I think I was going to say something similar to what you're saying, that the article points out that there's a religious difference, that in this country our laws are based on the Judeo-Christian religious concepts, whereas the Japanese culture doesn't have any of that. And so, you're right, it is illegal, and attempted suicide, you don't necessarily get put in jail, but you would be, admitted to a psychiatric unit. With or without your permission, you'd be admitted to a psychiatric unit. So I think that religious aspect is an important aspect, because in our culture,
Definitely.
our laws are based on that Judeo-Christian ethic.
Morris?
Yeah, I would like to say something similar. The stigma of failure is so deep in their culture that the only thing you can washed out by committed harakiri, or they can do it in another way. They may do it in another way, but they commit suicide. But the typical way, according to the religious thing, is harakiri.
I never heard of women committing harakiri, just men.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just
Go see the opera Butterfly and you'll see it on stage.
That's right.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Yes, and Butterfly.
Right.
What do you mean?
Philip?
Not a mother.
Oh,
Hey, no
well, no.
talking
Well, I
between
was
you.
just going to say that the whole concept of their background and civilization, the samurai code alone,
Right.
committing, this was the way to go if you did something disgraceful.
It was honorable.
We don't understand that culture at all.
That's true.
We don't even understand any part of it. If we've dealt with them at all, we deal with them on their terms. The Japanese have their own codes of conduct.
And the symbol is.
And when the Christian missionaries came there, they were not so successful as they were in other parts of Asia to convert the local people to their belief. The Christian who went there in multitudes 100 and some odd years ago. So this is a tight-knit society in a very small area. Few islands scattered through an archipelago there, and they're all busting at the seams.
Right.
And they live by a strict code. Now it's different. The current generations are different altogether, with modern things coming in and the complete changeover of their makeup completely. But the old habits still prevail.
Samurai.
And what Herbie said about parents and the system of obedience, blind obedience, is very difficult to break. And suicide, that harakiri, which is not a popular thing anymore, was very prevalent. Very prevalent, especially when the emperor was all powerful. That's why, briefly, I won't dwell on it, the Americans, when we defeated Japan, did not take away that emperor, because they knew, regardless of that he was part of the war, he was too strong a figure, and they'd never get the Japanese to agree with them unless they let him remain. And they did, and they were successful because of it.
The sword is the symbol.
Can I go?
Yeah.
If I say something, some people might feel very, very strange about it. Which country is considered the most anti-Semitic in the world? Do you know?
Japan.
Japan.
Absolutely. Well, this is neat.
Country has no Jews whatsoever.
We know that, but not for the reasons
Japan.
you think.
All right. So, you make certain
What did I say?
assumptions and you live with them. Let's put it this way. All right, let's go to the next one. Sparing no one. I'm trying to stay more or less in the international area now. Then we'll go. Sparing no one, a journalist's account of war. Oceanside, California. Barreling north through the Iraqi desert towards Baghdad with some of the most battle-hardened soldiers in the Marines, Evan Wright, a writer for Rolling Stone magazine, learned more about war than he had planned. For 2 months he was shot at constantly, and he came to recognize the whiz of bullets and the plume of smoke from rocket-propelled grenades. He watched soldiers shoot and kill enemy combatants, and he watched them shoot children. He witnessed dismal decision-making in the field. Trigger-happy, panicked young men, bored, filthy, foul-mouthed young men, brave, determined young men. He felt that their fear because he too was afraid. Mr. Wright, 39, wrote that he saw in a 3-part series he wrote what he saw in a 3-part series for Rolling Stone, winning a National Magazine Award in May. Now he has expanded that work into a book, Generation Killed, C.P. Putnam and Sons, which will be in stores next Thursday. Far from the news media's lionization of the captured PFC Jessica Lynch, or its vilification of enlisted grunts in the Abu Ghraib torture debacle, Mr. Wright's portrait is nuanced and grounded in details often overlooked in daily journalistic accounts, like the desperate search for places to relieve oneself during battle, or the constant use of racial epithets towards fellow soldiers and Iraqis. There are examples of the gallows. There are examples of the gallows humor of war. You're welcome. Vote Republican, deadpans one Marine to an uncomprehended Iraqi to whom he had given food. And the grisly roadside images of corpses that had been run over, their entrails squished out. The story in this war it's really ugly and chaotic. It's being fought by 18 to 24-year-olds who would otherwise be at some frat party hazing people. Mr. Wright said during a visit to this town beside Camp Pendleton that he arranged, he was interviewed with 2 Marines with whom he had witnessed the war. Our country is so divided, he continued. We swung after 9/11 from those military guys are idiots to those guys are heroes. Either way, you're not examining them as people. The fundamental thing I'm trying to write about these guys is I was fascinated with what they thought of the world when they weren't shooting their guns. His observations draw a complex portrait of able young men raised on video games and trained as killers. There's 19-year-old Corporal Howard James Trumbley, whom Mr. Wright described as curling over his machine gun, firing gleefully, and whom he quotes as saying, "I was just thinking one thing when we drove into that ambush. Grand Theft Auto, Vice City," he says, referring to a video game. "I felt like I was living it." Colonel Trumbley, still in Fallujah, could not be reached for comment. But then there's also Lieutenant Nathaniel Fisk, a Harvard graduate who joined the Marines, Mr. Wright writes, in a fit of idealism. After surviving an ambush and Mr. Trumbley's triggered finger, the Marines were giddy. Ever conscious of the cultural ferment that produced this generation, Mr. Wright writes, howling and laughing, they almost seemed like Johnny Knoxville's posse of suburban white homies celebrating one of his most outrageously pointless jackass stunts. Underlying the narrative is Mr. Wright's admiration for the soldiers he accompanied, a sentiment that is perhaps surprisingly reciprocated as a group. The Marines from Bravo Company 2 of the 1st Reconnaissance Battalion have embraced his warts and all portrait, even though it has meant repercussions for several members of the platoon. Exactly what happened when they talked there. Underlying the narrative, all right, Sergeant Antonio Espera, for example, was reassigned from combat after the Rolling Stone articles were published. He said he did not regret speaking freely to Mr. Wright, who traveled carrying only pen and paper, and he sued protecting against chemical weapons. In describing the reality of war, I think he came as close as possible, Sergeant Espera said, during a conversation at the apartment of Sergeant Eric Kocher, who was another Marine portrayed in the book, who was home here, healing after his arm was shattered by a rocket attack in Fallujah in May. It's like reliving the war. I want people to know war isn't glamorous, that it's a last resort. War means war. I don't want to go any further than this, but you get the idea as to what this is all about. Any comment on this? Because I can read the whole article too.
Don't.
In other words, you've always said that war is hell, but when you actually get the various incidents, like you have to go to the toilet or something, you don't know where, and there's no place for it. And the other point is, you see things that are absolutely impossible to try to forget, like entrails being spread all over the ground. You know, when you see things like in war, you know, then it becomes a completely different scene so far as we're concerned. We see that it's terrible, that people get shot, then when you're shot, you're dead, period. But there's so much more, so much more.
Philip.
Well, to time immemorial, people have been trying to write it down, their experiences of what they've seen in a war or whatever the situation is, and I don't think they succeed. Those people that were involved, no matter what they read about themselves, it's a hollow shell compared to the actualities. And every war has had its own writers. You can go back to the Greeks and the Romans. Everybody wrote about the wars. And the recent wars that we were involved with, we had more writers than we had hair on our heads. And none of them could really, up to a point, impart what really occurs in a zone that Charlie read. Those people that were involved in it can tell you about it, but they cannot impart a feeling of what happens and how you react, and when you have to, as Charlie mentioned several times, when you have to go to the bathroom, which is no big deal, you go. The point is that it's a difficult thing to write down the actual feelings unless you're there. He is trying. He probably is more successful than others, but it's only words on paper. And you can't really tell anybody else about it unless they're there.
That's right. Pearl.
Well, it's interesting that one of the soldiers who told a very frank story says he's not sorry for having done so. And he feels that what he said and what the writer said was essentially true for what they had experienced. Nobody can experience the whole war. It's impossible. You try to talk about the Holocaust, can't do it. You can only talk about what has happened to you, what you have observed. And there's enough of that to make us feel it's high time we stopped playing war, because it's not a game and it's not fun.
That's true. It's not a movie either.
No.
That's right.
It's not a movie.
Yet we keep on doing this again and again and again. It was so important for us to go into Iraq. We had to do it without the UN sanction. And this is the result. Now we're sticking our tongues out and begging for the US sanction. And the countries involved don't want to give it to us. They say, look, we don't want to send our guys to get killed. It's very clear what's going on there.
Well,
It's
that's
a
not what
mess.
he's doing.
Herb.
Yeah, well, first of all, I take the contrarian view from the speaker before the last speaker. A violent contrarian view, because you don't have to be there. But you can read the personal diaries of people who still go back to the landing at Omaha Beach. And when you see them discuss it, they still miss their buddies and remember very clearly what happened to them, right alongside. So they lived this whole life, but their life continued, but it left a permanent mark. And you want to go further than that, and I like to go further than that, is with all the veterans who came back, and couldn't shake it, who went on dope and drugs, have to be rehabilitated more than once because they couldn't get out of that syndrome of killing for the sake of killing because you're ordered to do it. So they did it, but it affected them. And unfortunately, the person who it doesn't affect, well, there's something different about them. They don't want to talk about it.
Gonna have
It's
to
there.
ask you to put that.
It's there, but the point is, it affects you permanently, regardless where you are, whether you're a relative or you're a victim. There, period.
Good. Anybody?
Philip, did you
I want to say, we're talking, the subject, if I'm not mistaken, is the writer imparting a battle. That's what we're talking about.
But
We're
we're
not
talking about
discussing.
the battle scene itself,
I
rather
agree.
than anything else.
But that's what we're talking about.
All right.
And how difficult it is to put that on paper.
All right.
That's the subject.
I am not commenting on this subject we've been talking about. The same token, I would like to make a statement about the chairs saying that Japan has no anti-Semitism.
Please, I'm
Just-
sorry. That's gone, that's all.
He
Next.
said that Japan has.
Yeah.
That Japan, all I want to say
Please.
is I disassociate myself in that
This is
statement.
out of the
You didn't have a
agenda.
chance
I
to.
don't want to take the time with it.
Okay, all right, just one sentence, all right. No is no,
Go ahead, next.
Norma.
no is no.
I saw a very interesting interview. It was on late at night. I don't know if it was one of the news stations on cable. They were interviewing service men and women that are affiliated with the hospitals that are set up there.
Yeah.
And the average age of the people there are like from age 20 to 30 was the oldest. And they interviewed one man was an X-ray technician, the other was a nurse, and the other, they just called him a medic. I don't know if that's he's a full doctor or what. But, when they spoke about what they see and what they're doing and how they're trying to save lives and to save them and get them in good enough condition to be transported, I think, to Germany, to a major hospital. But then they asked them how they felt that about treating the prisoners of war. And their answer was that they're doing it under the laws of the Geneva Convention. But yet they said how they personally feel is how that they're spat at by these prisoners of war and, cursed or whatever. And I just, it was quite very sad hearing what they had to say.
Ruthie, can you put me down?
Go ahead, Al.
Yeah. If I was ever in the war, which I never was, I was never in the army, and I was in the war, let's say we'd be fighting, and I killed 2-3 soldiers, I think for the rest of my life, I would be guilty. I would feel guilty that I killed 3 people. That's the way I feel.
Bernie? Okay, Bernie.
I was in the Army for 3.5 years, World War II. I was just lucky. 4 different times I was ready to be sent overseas into action. And they changed my orders. And I was always apprehensive, any day now. So even though you don't kill anybody, even though you don't see any action, it takes an effect on you. You're not yourself anymore. At any time they can put you in there. So 3.5 years, I was under that pressure. And I came out, fortunately, I was lucky.
You lost your
I
hair.
lost my head here, not there.
Didn't lose his head.
Yeah,
caught the
the
hair.
whole-
Only the other, not the head.
Okay.
That's about all you did.
Let me just wind this up. I'm sorry, Morris, if I held you to it, because I'm trying,
You were incorrect, that's why I tried to say it.
What
but
did he say that was
that's it.
incorrect?
What did he say?
Point of order on the chair. I'd like to hear him say what was
That's it.
incorrect.
That was wrong.
Was incorrect.
What was
because-
incorrect?
Because Japan has no anti-Semitism, just Japan has a policy
No, they-
of not letting in any
They're
immigrants.
xenophobic.
And that,
They're pure
that's right.
xenophobia. That's what it is.
That's
Which is
right.
different than
And
that.
that's the
Which is
reason
a little
why is no Jews there. Because
No,
no other
I-
minorities either. That's why I wanted to say.
All right, I
That's
just
it.
want to say this much, that a number of years ago, somebody came out with that statement, which was accepted. I'm even accepting it myself without any proof whatsoever, where they say that the most anti-Semitic country in
not
the
true.
world is Japan.
Not
This
true.
was a statement made, and nobody seemed to
they have a representative in
worry
Israel?
much
Do they
about
have an
it.
ambassador?
And the very
Yeah.
fact that they put it is that, how can you be anti-Semitic? You don't have any Jews to be anti-Semitic.
Ah.
You know,
No
this-
other minorities either there.
All right, but,
It's a
all right,
matter of
let me
policy.
continue
Go
with this,
from
please.
Okay.
I looked in the paper, I wasn't able to study it too much today because I got the paper quite late. But it says over here something about 2 pipeline blasts and about the fact that $1 billion could be lost because of the oil that cannot be shipped. And more important than anything, assault by insurgents on a convoy kills 4 foreign men near
doing it every
airports.
day. They do
This
it
I
every
want to
day.
talk about because the important thing over here was the media coverage of this event. And this event showed people being pulled out of these various vehicles, some alive, some badly hurt, and all about them was, hooray! Hooray! We're killing Americans. We're talking now about a new a situation where Iraq is being given back to the Iraqis, presumably to have a democratic regime, whenever it is that they come. But with it, we have no real knowledge of how the people in Iraq feel. They are anti-American, they are anti-democratic, and mostly they are anti this new combination which they have. And it's such a terrible thing because there's no way to do anything about it. You cannot educate these people after the kind of carnage which was involved in the invasion of their country. Can't be done. And you know, I just don't know what the answer is going to be. And I don't think anybody else does. Even the UN involvement in this thing doesn't seem to do very much because they keep on killing those people that the UN okayed. The Minister of Education, the assistant vice, whatever. In other words, they target these people, just like, well, Israel used to do the same thing. But they target these people and they knock them off. And how you can achieve a government on that basis, I just don't know. I don't think anybody does. I mean, I was just talking about this because of the fact that we started this. This is really not part of the agenda. I want to continue with the agenda, and if you want to talk a little bit about this later, you'll be able to. The third one. Oh, yes. There's an article over here about how Orthodox Israelis feel about yielding Gaza. And I want to read part of it.
About what? I'm sorry.
Orthodox Israelis and the program to get out of Gaza.
Oh, Gaza, right.
And, you know, it's very interesting, you know, concepts over here. It was in Gaza that Samson brought the house down. Some Israelis say, with gallows humor, that in killing hundreds of Philistines, he was the first suicide bomber.
Right.
That aside, Gaza offers little Jewish history, unlike places in the West Bank like Hebron that witnessed momentous events in Jewish history. That is why Prime Minister Ariel Sharon's plan to withdraw from Gaza is encountering far less opposition among Israel's Orthodox Jews than some might have imagined. They don't see it as a halakhic question, said Rabbi Moshe Taragin, a teacher in the West Bank settlement of Alon Shavut, referring to Jewish religious law. Therefore, it's a decision for generals rather than rabbis. Rabbi Taragin is a member of a movement that sees all settler colonies as part of a divine plan leading to the coming of the Messiah. For them, it is forbidden to uproot Jews from what they see as part of the land of Israel. They speak of expansive Israeli borders from the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan River. But Rabbi Taragin said the possibility that an exchange of land would serve a peaceful environment deserves attention. We're willing to allow pragmatism to temper our messianism, he said. Differing views among religious Zionists concerning the settlements partly explain why the National Religious Party, which represents many of them, has not bolted from the ruling Likud coalition, even though two of its leaders, Effie Item, the government housing minister, and Yitzhak Levy, a deputy minister in the prime minister's office, did resign. Some party leaders like Zevulun Orlev are willing to remain in the government until an actual evacuation, which under Mr. Sharon's timetable would not be carried out for at least 9 months. Mr. Orlev, the Minister for Labor and Social Affairs, was awarded Sunday with a promotion to Mr. Sharon's security cabinet. The Orthodox have a multiple of ways of looking at the religious significance of Gaza. Many, for example, believe that since Jews now live there, the area is covered by religious laws that govern agriculture within Israel, like the one requiring that fields lie fallow every 7th year. But at the same time, they weigh other principles like the necessity of saving Jewish lives, even if it means violating sacred obligations. Anyway, I can continue this, but you get the idea as to what's going on over here. And, you know, it's very different from the view of a necessity on a part of many, many Orthodox Jews to not only to stay in the West Bank, but also to stabilize it to a point where Arabs have absolutely no say in it whatsoever. Never mind this business of a Palestinian authority or a Palestinian state. The way things are going, there will never be a Palestinian state, in spite of all the talks that we have in Washington, in Jerusalem, or anything else. The very fact, for example, that they want to now build walls around a settlement 10 miles away from, 10 miles into the actual West Bank indicates just where the thing is going, in that they are not going to give up the West Bank under any conditions, and there's no point to their even giving it up, because, you know, most of the settlements will determine just exactly what kind of a land it's going to be.
Morris?
Yeah. The trouble is between the Israelis and the Palestinians that both parties are maximalist. They want maximum, and they don't want to yield for that maximum because the religion tells them that. They want maximum because they say it belongs to the Arab land, and the Arab land in that peninsula is a holy place for the Muslims, no room for infidels. You can see that in Saudi Arabia, the purpose is to chase out all the Americans, the infidels from that territory. So the Israeli side is the maximalist, which the Torah tells them that this belongs to the Jews and it must belong to the Jews. Once you step in that territory, you have to live there and spread religion, so on and so on. I'm not anti-religion, but in this fact, if they won't be pragmatism wouldn't take place, I'm very skeptical about any chances for peace.
Pearl?
Well, we don't know. I mean, what we do know at this point is that there are a great many people who are fundamentalists, and they hold on to rigorously to what it says in the Bible. Actually, Gaza does not have that kind of history with respect to the Jews, so there's an argument. But these are not people who are going to take arguments. They're going to say, here we are, and we've set up our Jewish entities, and we were urged to do so by the Prime Minister, and that's that. But sometimes with time, and a few people who might be fundamentalists, but they throw in a little ingredient of pragmatism, you can get a little movement. The question is when it will come, and to what extent the leadership will help create it, because leadership is very important in this issue. And Sharon has a hard job there, because on the one hand, up until just recently, he was saying, go ahead, keep on going into the settlements, add to them, increase and multiply. And now he's saying the opposite. So it's hard for people who have heard his message to swallow the opposite.
Al?
Can I say something on the first subject about Iraq? The one you read before this, I have something. I heard on CNN yesterday that this is one of the worst things we ever have accomplished, because the government in Iraq will not accept the new government. They will not accept it. It will never be peace there, and once we get out of there, it'll be terrible there.
I think I said that.
No, I don't think so. I'm just telling you what I heard on CNN, that this will turn out to be one of the worst things we have done in God knows how many years.
As long as you bring it back, I just want to say this, that there's a lot of contention now. They want to know, what are you going to do with Saddam Hussein? What are you going to do with him? So far, nobody even knows where he is, what the interrogations have been like, what his attitude is. They don't even know where he goes to the toilet. Nothing. And it's this kind of thing, you know, it's bugging a lot of people, especially people that believe in the Geneva Conventions. The Red Cross has been very, very active trying to get him up. And the Army says that in a couple of weeks they will determine just exactly what has to be done with him in a way of charging him and everything else. But so far, no word at all.
Herbert?
All right, now.
Wait a minute.
All right.
Herb, go ahead.
Well, since Charlie brought it up, you know, I was musing around before the meeting started. I was talking to my good friend Al here about what are we going to do? What are we going to do with Saddam? And I said, I quote myself, right? That the worst mistake we ever made is by allowing him to come out alive from that hole when they found him. That was the time when you should have violated the Geneva Conventions, because you had it so small, you had so few people involved in it, and you wouldn't have this hanging around your neck now. Saddam Hussein in front of a public court, you have to be in front of a public court, with divided people, with divided Iraqians, the Shiites, the Sunnis, the Kurds, and the Turks, and the French who want to get in on anything that we're in on, you know, without killing any of the soldiers, you know, that all these mistakes that we've made, you know, and we're very reluctant to admit it. This one over here is one of the worst blunders we ever made by allowing him to come out of that hole alive.
If they can kill his sons, why not him?
Sure.
Philip?
Where is all the speculation coming from? I'd like to know who is speculating.
Red Cross.
Oh, they don't bother me at all. The Red Cross is the least of my thoughts.
I give them
My point-
$100 occasionally. I don't
You do? That's your money, kid. The point that I'm trying to make is, it's not such a big problem to me personally.
You
I
see
mean,
that
if he's
one?
alive-
Red Cross. Go ahead.
The Red Cross is a problem for me. If he's alive, you can put him on trial. We have plenty of examples where leaders of certain states have been put on trial. During the Second World War, they had the Nuremberg trials. We had the Japanese on trial. We put them on trial and condemned what they did in public, and we sentenced them to jail. Or some we killed, we hung. Others killed themselves, as we know. But they should be on trial and shown publicly what they have done, so that the UN or whoever sponsors the trial will do it in that fashion, to make people realize what this man committed. I don't think it would have been a good idea for them to kill him, because forever after there would have been speculation on why was he killed. It works two ways. What would we have done? The speculation should better be, if I can recap for a moment, Hitler. What if Hitler had not committed suicide?
I think we have to wait a little bit to find out what's going to happen.
I know that.
I think it has to be in the next one.
Whatever. There's no time limit. That's
No.
bull. In my opinion, there's no time limit.
Excuse me.
They'll assign him a defense attorney pro bono who'll do it for nothing, and he'll get a good defense.
Have we
And
won the war?
Cochran is available.
Oh,
All right.
have we won the war? Yeah.
Wait, we have more. Herb, no, Morris.
Yeah. There is a saying that the leaders, the nation deserved to have a leader, but they deserve something like that. Means that if the Iraqis have a leader like Hussein, means that they deserve it. It fits. I don't know how that I apply that saying that by saying it's just fascinating the way the pious of history roll and how fast and how much they changed. Who would think when they caught Hussein, they said that everyone was so bitter about him. They want to kill him and then to throw him in the water and then to burn him. Nothing would be enough to punish him. Now a situation looks like that in practice. I heard that they say once the Iraq becomes independent, they are going to look at that he has to be relieved because he was taken by occupying forces, and then the existing government has to decide what to do. I wouldn't be surprised to put him on the throne again. That's what I tried to say.
That's
Everything
right.
looks to me as a
But I would
fascinating.
combine
That's
it
all.
with Judaism.
That's all. That's all.
No,
That's
no,
all.
fine.
I made my point. That's all.
I don't want to go into
What?
this too
He should
much.
become an
I think
Orthodox Jew.
Please.
we shouldn't worry about Saddam. He's in a safe place.
Really.
He's not doing any
Yeah,
harm at the
I
moment.
agree.
And as far as what they'll do to him, if the Iraqi people have a say, they'll probably cut his head off.
I don't think so.
Some would, some wouldn't. Some are still very much
I'm loving
for him.
Yeah, well,
And they would resent it very much
they
to see a
won't wait
picture of
for
Hussein
them
without
to
any clothes on.
And
That
no
would
head.
be terrible.
And no head.
I know it. Okay, let's go on.
Herb,
Any
all
more?
right, go ahead.
I want to come to an American scene now. So far, everything has been outside our borders. Right now, though, I'd like to know what we feel about the role of the 9/11 Investigatory Committee. The unusual media coverage that was given it, because the reason for its inception was to determine who was at fault for 9/11. And since then, they've been all over the world. They've been all over the country, all over every place. This was the, because each one of those people who are part of the committee have a particular need to assert their power, let's put it that way. And they've been doing it, whether it be Keene from New Jersey or anyplace else. And I want to say this much: what has happened is that as a result of the investigation, the CIA head Tenet was fired, which was a good thing, I suppose. And there was a tremendous embarrassment of the Bush administration. Besides which also, the worth of guys like Ashcraft, Ridge, and the other so-called
Officials.
caretakers of anti-terrorism in the United States has very, very definitely fallen, because they don't seem to be doing anything. And anything that has to be done in a way of amalgamating the intelligence services in this country apparently is off in the distance because of these Ashcrafts and Ridges, who do not apparently want to be part of the thing. Anyway, this is the score, and there's a lot of embarrassment for the Bush administration. And and they're going to come out with their report, I think, tomorrow. No, they're ending their report. The last report will be tomorrow, next meeting, and then they're supposed to
So they'll assign
they're
blames,
supposed
so
to
what?
issue a comment, issue a report. The report is there's no date for that report. In other words, who knows when it's going to come. So far, they seem to put it off and off and off. Anyway, this is the score. What do you think?
Yeah, over here.
All right, go ahead, Pearl.
I listened to part of that hearing this morning. Not a very big part of it, because I had something else important to do.
Like how many? Good.
But the point is, I was very impressed with what came out. The fact that they were talking about the Al-Qaeda, and specifically about the different arms of Al-Qaeda, and how they were stretched out over the world, and what they were doing in their camps and in their schools, down the line. And I said to myself, well, this sounds pretty good. I wish I could listen to more. But
Was it, what was it on, 66?
National Public Radio.
Oh, NPR?
Yeah, from 9 o'clock on.
So,
I usually sit and I listen and listen and listen. This time I couldn't. But what I heard was at least impressive. They're digging things up.
Anybody? Anyone?
Okay,
Yes, go ahead, Norma.
Well, what good is, is it gonna do that whatever information they dig up after the fact? Like in today's paper was something with time elements of the Air Force, and that with the plane that hit the Pentagon, and how it was in a matter of minutes, and there was no way possible that they could have intercepted them in time. The only thing that I would think that would come out of this is that perhaps you can't prevent something that's, if it's going to happen in the future, but to be more prepared, that possibly may be an answer. Prevent it. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen.
Yes, Phil?
the interesting thing that I heard, which is part of this in the sense that Congress had to set aside a certain amount of money, in the billions, I think, to settle all the claims
Yes.
of
I was
9/11.
gonna come with that.
Oh, I'm
All right, go
sorry,
ahead.
am I
Yeah,
going?
It's all right.
I'll hold back.
Go ahead, no, it's all right, go ahead.
Billions.
I heard it, I didn't read it, that they have settled all the claims. What's his name, that man that was in charge of it, I can't remember his name. He settled all the claims of the people that put in those claims, to the satisfaction or the
Feinberg.
Feinberg?
Feinberg.
Yes, I see it in front of me.
3 years.
He settled all the claims so that now they are finished with that phase of it. The other phase about blame, man, there's enough blame to go around forever. And what it will do to solve any problem that did exist, as Charlie said, is not being solved. So what's the point of this report? Most people, the layman, the average layperson who had his head on his shoulders knows where the blame is. We know the whole gadilla about not connecting the dots. And we know they had all this information from an agent in the Southwest who told an agent in the Northwest and nobody connected it. We know the stupidity of the FBI and the CIA and all of them not getting together. It's a fact that everybody knows. So what will they say with this report? That's what bothers me. We can do very little. We're not as strong as we should be in our intelligence. Maybe they've changed since 9/11. I hope they have. They're not really going to tell us everything, but they must have. At least now they talk to each other. Before this, the FBI and the CIA were distant relatives. Maybe now they're brothers and sisters. I don't know. Let's hope that that is happening now, and they share information immediately as it happens, that if a spy in one area gets a poop and he gives it to somebody else, they talk. Maybe we can prevent these catastrophes. This one is a joke. If you read it in its entirety, the way it happened, the way each one of these 12 or 9, if you had 9 or 12 from one country came to this country and set this thing up and did the job perfectly without interference, is amazing that they did it, but they did. And they made all our intelligence services look like a bunch of amateur kids running around not knowing what they were doing, playing with blocks. This would never have happened, I think, in a country like Israel. Remember, the Mossad now goes around the whole world teaching other people how to fight terrorism. They are called upon for that. They were helping the United States in that respect. But they didn't listen to what the Israeli intelligence told them. They're too good. You know, each one has got a peck of their own.
I know.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's a so-called Monday morning quarterback.
We are, of course we are. We're
I
allowed.
just want to, since you brought it up, I just want to mention two sentences. After weighing value of lives, 9/11 Fund completes its task.
That's it.
More than 5,000 families share almost $7 billion.
Right.
That's all we have to talk about this, because
That's
you brought it
true.
up.
I'm glad they did that finally. It was getting a little
Can I get off that subject and go back to the other?
I wish you wouldn't, because I have a lot more.
Well, because
But,
I want to discuss what we have learned.
That's what we're
You see,
discussing.
we have learned nothing.
Well,
In your mind, we have learned a lot.
No,
Trust.
the point is, someone said we're a country of fools.
We are.
You see, right? Yeah, but nobody followed through and said that if we don't learn the lesson
Right.
and take it to heart and just shift the people around, which we've done in the past and which we've done in the present or in the near present, you know, we're just firing so-and-so and we're replacing them with the same people. It's the people who we can't touch, who we can continue. It's our presidential cabinet with our vice president, with whatever his name is.
All right, come to it. What do you want to say?
And the point is that we're not learning anything, and they're getting stronger, stronger and much better organized, and we're going through the motions because what comes out about with those 20,000 or 30,000 sheets of paper doesn't add up to a bag of beans about changing anything the way our government is falling on their
Sure he's right.
I just want to say.
Wait a minute, Morris.
There you
Pearl.
go. You got one man cheering for you.
Pearl.
Yeah.
He's right.
I just want to say that the issue of whether the CIA and the
FBI.
FBI
BFI.
are brothers or simply distant kinsmen is not even the issue, because we weren't even able to get information about just plain citizens. people who were teachers in the aviation schools who called and they said, this is very strange. We're getting people who are only willing to learn how to fly one way.
Right.
It's very fishy, and we want the government to know that. And who in hell listened to them? Nobody. So it's a little bigger than what the CIA and the...
Okay, Morris.
Yeah, and our government was lethargic, not just this government. We're starting from Reagan. They were sleeping. They didn't know there's such a thing as Al-Qaeda. I mentioned it's Lebanon. There was a car bomb, killed hundreds of soldiers. What did we do about it? Who did it? Nobody cared who did it. Nobody saw a danger. And then there came other things, there was no danger. Like I said, we're going back to a few presidents. They were sleeping about it. They didn't recognize the danger. So what did we learn? We didn't learn anything. If there shouldn't be such a distance of time from Reagan to now to wake up. It's so many years too late. That's it.
I want to say a word or two on this. I have, from the very beginning, said that this operation, the 9/11 thing, started maybe 4 or 5 years ago in the planning stage. And when they actually completed the actual planning and actually started doing something, just think in terms of what they did. 2 planes were sent to the World Trade Center. 1 plane presumably was supposed to attack the capital of the United States, the Capitol. 1 plane was supposed to attack and was very, very, very successful attacking the Pentagon. All within a matter of 1 hour. Do you know what that is? That's a classic of planning. And only the biggest kind of luck would have been able to prevent this. The luck of finding someone that is so involved that maybe the government could have done about it. Frankly, I don't think anybody could have. But at the same time, I'm looking at it from this point of view and thinking in terms of what the intelligence authorities in our country could have been done, and I very, very frankly wonder if they were capable of stopping it. This is my opinion. You don't have to have it, you don't have to be with it at all. But I will say this much, that they're looking for fault, and after a thing like that happens, you gotta put your finger on somebody and say, you were responsible. FBI, CIA, Clinton administration, you name it, all right? It's from this point of view that I look at this thing, and it's from this point of view I think that we have to make judgments as to the kind of committee report that we can expect, all right? I want to go a little bit further, if you don't mind.
Pearl, let Pearl say.
I won't say much, just this, that when you say that we couldn't have anticipated this, now why in the world didn't it occur to us that if these guys came in 1993 and tried to destroy the World Trade Center and didn't do such a good job, that they wouldn't come back and try again?
They did anticipate that.
No, did nobody anticipate that?
They
When was
did.
our
But they never thought they'd go up.
That was 1 truck, that wasn't 4 airplanes. All right, look, I want to
Yeah,
continue,
she's wrong.
because, I still
They did
have a couple of things that I think that are a little on a controversial sense. First of all, let me talk a little about a small article over here, which I'll read, and I don't think too much will be discussed about. 2 minorities spur rapid United States growth. Washington, June 14th. Explosive growth among Hispanic and Asian Americans propelled a surge in the United States population from 2000 to 2003 to nearly 300 million people.
Wow.
The Census Bureau reported on Monday. The number of people of Hispanic descent, the nation's largest minority group, rose to 39.9 million, a 13% increase from April 2000 to July 2003. The agency said that far pace the 3% increase in the American population during the same time to 290.8 million. Now I know how many people. Asian Americans were the next fastest growing among the large minority groups, up to 12.6% to 11.9 million, while the black population rose nearly 4% to 37 million. About 4.3 million people listed themselves of more than one race, up 10.5% from 2000. The population of Hispanic and Asian Americans rose in nearly every state over the 1990s, in large part as a result of immigration. People who identified themselves only as white remained the single largest group at 197 million, up just 1% from 2000 to 2003. All right, gives you an idea. Any comment on this? I thought it was interesting, as an educational.
Yes, Pearl.
Yeah, I think that John Kerry should take this piece of information very much to heart and spend a lot of time with the Hispanic community and give them the kind of reasons why they should vote for him. And if he's smart, he'll also choose a vice president who's Hispanic.
Yeah, Chair.
Yes, Philip.
Well, according to what Pearl just said, first of all, they've been doing it. Bush has been doing it, but he ran for election. My interesting question is, who is going to woo the Asian vote? What happened? I'm surprised Pearl didn't see that. What about the Asians? Who is wooing them? Who's looking for their vote? Are they voting, are they going to Atlantic, are the candidates going to go to Atlantic Avenue and woo all those Asian businessmen? On what grounds would they go? What would they promise them? Come on. We know they wooed the Spanish vote. We know the Latino vote is quite important in the city, in California, in the Southwest. Everybody woos them. What's his name? Our president now talks in Spanish to them. He does. He delivers speeches in Spanish, which is admirable. I wish he could convert it into something to do something. The point is, how do you woo the Asians? This is a puzzle.
Okay.
Nobody has an answer. I see you're all looking a little funny.
It's their problem to solve.
What? Of course it is. They got to vote for somebody. They are going to vote for people. Are they suddenly going to be Republicans or Democrats?
Okay, I got another little thing.
They're gonna vote?
Are they going to vote? That's even better.
That's important.
It is important.
Somali is accused of planning a terror attack at a shopping center in Ohio. I'm taking Ohio because my grandchildren come from there. A Somali citizen living in Ohio has been charged in an alleged plot by Al-Qaeda to bomb an unidentified shopping mall in Columbus, according to an indictment unsealed on Monday by federal prosecutors. The 4-count indictment brought by a grand jury in Columbus accused the man, Nuradim M. Abdi, 32, of conspiring along with a Quetta member, Lyman Faris, to engage in terrorist acts after traveling to Ethiopia to study what one government document, the case described as radio usage, guns, guerrilla warfare, bombs, and anything to damage the enemy. Mr. Abdi, who operated a cell phone business in Columbus, has been in custody since his arrest in November by the immigration authorities. On Monday, prosecutors filed a separate motion asking a federal judge to continue his detention pending his trial on the ground that he is a flight risk. Law enforcement officials said the plot was still under investigation, but they cautioned that it appeared not to have advanced beyond the discussion stage. The officials expressed doubt that Mr. Abdi had the financial, organizational, or technical skills to carry out an attack. At the center of the government's case against Mr. Abdi is his trip to Ethiopia. The indictment said he concealed his intention to engage in military training by misstating on government trial applications in April 1999 they planned to travel to Germany and Saudi Arabia for religious and personal reasons, etc. and so forth. I don't want to go too much with this, but it just gives you an idea that here are two individuals who have been caught by the anti-terrorist planners in America, and they're not even very, very sure that they were able to carry this through. I mean, the whole thing is, you know, the
It
kind
sounds
of
like a
thing that
joke.
you have to worry about, because individuals are able to do these things with enough resources
Right.
behind them. And as individuals, they can do a tremendous job. One of them, for example, is accused of thinking of cutting the cables on the
Thinking?
Brooklyn Bridge. Thinking
Oh
of
my
cutting
God.
it. In other words, he looked at the cable and says, "Can I
You got
cut
the
them?"
thought police now.
I mean, you know, you
is
laugh at
ridiculous.
these things when
Nobody's
these
laughing.
things come to fruition. It isn't funny at all. But at the same time, you know, the kind of things that you're given, you know, to think about is something else again.
What was
In
he
this
thinking of
particular
doing?
Did they know what he
case,
was thinking of?
go ahead, Columbus.
Well, I was just thinking that you
Somebody
brought
must
up
have
both.
Wait a minute. Wait, Carol.
You've really brought up both sides of the freedom issue. There's, you know, how much do you investigate immigrants and, you know, the people who live in this country. Dan's mother has been called about her employees because of emails they have sent, you know, so, you know, how much are we being investigated to, that's one side, and then there's the other side. Well, what are our personal freedoms, and how far are our personal freedoms being encouraged to
Right.
follow these issues? So you've sort of got that push-pull of
exactly
the responsibility and the
going on
personal
now.
freedom to.
Abby, I just want to say one thing about this. So far as these people are concerned, this guy is a legitimate businessman. He's in the cell phone business in Columbus. So you can look around for him to be the kind of
What are they gonna
person
look for?
that will
They're looking for
destroy a shopping center. You wonder about it. Unless, of course, there's good reason, you know, to suspect.
Chair, put me down.
Carol.
I didn't put my hand.
No, I'm still. Phil.
The scariest thing about all this is the fact, as was said by Abby, about the civil rights. The president, under the guise of the war we're in, has taken away or stepped into civil rights in a big way. That allows this type of garbage to occur. Without it, he couldn't do it. He's being challenged. A lot of civil rights activists are now challenging the administration. Homeland Security is the big wheel. You know, Homeland Security now is running the country as far as looking up the Muslims. They're not looking at Latinos, but they're looking only at Muslims to see who is a terrorist. Are they looking for that proverbial needle? I don't know. But civil rights is at issue here, and we have to be very careful.
Because of the Patriot Act.
What's that? Wait a minute.
Right.
What did you want to say?
Because of the Patriot Act, they're violating all
that.
the civil rights.
Well, that's exactly right. That's the act that did it.
All right, Herbert, go ahead.
Of course, it's just throws me off. The point is, nobody wants to take the responsibility, but the responsibility can be placed. See, but our representatives don't take. They want to take the responsibility, and these are our representatives. And like some people used to say, well, every 4 years you can change them, or every 6 years. Senators and House of Representatives every 2 years, you know, and that's a crock as far as I'm concerned, because you have to get to the higher ups, to the people who have the responsibility, and tell them that this is not allowed. You have to train them, and when you train them, you have to train them right, otherwise we don't pay you, period. And we get another company. And when it comes to the cable across the line, the people, the wire cable, don't want to send special guards there to check out the cable. You know, that's going to be the government's responsibility. So what are they getting paid for? They're all there to make a profit. They're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. But when you let them off the hook, because free enterprise in our country, apparently, the weakest link
in the chain is free enterprise, means you do whatever you feel like doing, and still send the bill in with all these companies, and we'll check on it later. And later is too late, unfortunately.
Okay.
It actually is the last item, but we're gonna have a little discussion on it. It seems that the Clintons went back to the White House a couple of days ago. The idea was to hang their pictures as ex-president and in a cordial foursome, Bill,
Cordial.
That's
a
English.
cordial, C-O-R-D-I-A-L.
Cordial, it's a drink.
Foursome.
Pronounced cordial.
Bill and Hillary Clinton and George and Laura Bush were at the White House for the unveiling of the Clintons' official portraits.
Yes.
Mr. Bush praised his predecessor.
I love that.
Mr. Bush praised his predecessor, whom he nicknamed 42 because he said he would never use his name as president. This was a Bush statement some time ago. So instead of that, he says President number 40.
Really?
Yes, he
I
did.
didn't know that.
Yes, he did.
When he, and Mr. Clinton
42.
returned
42.
the compliments to bipartisan applause from an audience that included John Kerry's Brain Trust. The fact that they did this, of course, you know, is of course American history good. It happens every time, you know, a new president goes in, and it's necessary to have. But I am more interested in the guy that painted the picture, which I think I would like to talk about. Guy's name is Simi Lee Cox. He's black.
He's black.
Let me read something about him and try to think of the implications here of a election day when black people are thinking in terms of who they're going to vote for. All right? It's from this point of view that I'm reading this. It was more than 50 years ago that a blinding sunspot, an ill-timed turn, and the whack of a whizzing baseball left Simi Knox with a badly bruised and wandering eye. To ease his recovery, someone suggested that the teenager take up a hobby that would retrain the muscles in his eye, retrain the muscles, and he had always liked doodling, so the young Mr. Knox started to draw. On Monday, Mr. Knox, now 68, and the first African-American commissioned to paint a presidential portrait, thought back fondly on that freak accident as his portraits of former President and First Lady Bill and Hillary Rodham Clinton were unveiled at a White House ceremony. During the ceremony, Mr. Clinton cited Mr. Knox's career as a part of America's promise. Mr. Knox described his professional journey as a series of fortuitous setbacks and discoveries. It has happened many times for me, the painter said in an interview after the morning's events. Things that I thought were liabilities turned out to be assets. In the years following his accident, his eye recovered, and Mr. Knox took up drawing all the time. He tried his hand at comic strips and rendered portraits of his girlfriend on paper napkins. Still, for the son of a carpenter and mechanic growing up in segregated Alabama, art didn't seem like a viable way to make a living. So after a 3-year stint in the Army, Mr. Knox decided to go to college and major in biology. Mr. Knox's grades in his major weren't too impressive, but his illustrations of amoebas and other organisms caught the attention of his teachers, who gently urged him towards the art. His first real painting was a self-portrait in pastel, which he completed during college in 1961. I think we are all born with a program in place. Listen closely. I think we are all born with a program in place, he said. Many people ignore it or don't pay attention to it, but some people are lucky enough to access it. Still, it took him another several years and another twist of fate to settle into a career as a portraitist. Though his real life was portraiture, many of his contemporaries considered the style passé. At Temple University's Tyler School of Art, where he completed his bachelor's and master's degree in fine art, abstract art was the rage. Abstract art is,
Yes.
Mr. Knox began a successful career as an abstract painter. He gained entree into Washington art circles in 1971 when his work was exhibited at a contemporary American painting show at the Corcoran Gallery of Art, along with such notable artists as Roy Lichtenstein and Philip Pearlstein. Yet, he said, with abstract painting, I didn't feel the challenge. The face is the most complicated thing there is. The challenge is finding that thing that makes it different from another face. He continued painting portraits when he could, but it wasn't until he lost his job as art teacher in 1980 that he received the creative push he needed. To make a living, he began devoting more time to portraits, and in 1986, a curator introduced him to the comedian Bill Cosby. He told me to just focus on my art, and he'd make sure work came my way, he said. He gave me the opportunity I needed to practice. In addition to several portraits of Mr. Cosby and his family, Mr. Knox has painted the Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall and Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Really?
Bader Ginsburg.
Bader Ginsburg. Wow.
The boxer Muhammad Ali and the baseball player Hank Aaron, who went to high school with Mr. Knox. It was Justice Ginsburg who recommended Mr. Knox to the Clintons. He paints faces that really say something to me, said Betty C. Monkman, chief White House curator during the Clinton administration. Mr. Clinton interviewed Mr. Knox in December 2000, hired him just before leaving office. Though the two met several times before the portrait was completed in the fall of 2002, the artist worked primarily from photographs taken in the Oval Office. Mr. Knox, who was based in Silver Spring, Maryland, and whose commission fees range from $9,500 to $60,000, said the fact that both he and Mr. Clinton came from poor Southern roots gave him a special feel for the man. He declined to reveal his fee for the Clinton portraits.
What's his first
The
name?
pose,
Simi.
please.
Simi.
Simi. The pose for Mr. Clinton's portrait, standing and looking directly forward, was the most sensible approach to capturing his style, Mr. Knox said. He takes great pride to how the eyes lock on a viewer from any vantage point and seem to move with the viewer across the room. Mr. Clinton is a very straightforward guy, Mr. Nix said, adding, his attitude is sort of, take me as I am, and that's why I wanted to portray. Though he said he was pleased with the painting, he also was relieved that the process was over. For years I've been extremely nervous, he said. But today I put it to rest. I will sleep tonight.
Question.
What do you think of that?
Did Hillary pose? I don't know if she ever posed. Did she pose for the
She was
thing?
there.
That's what.
It may have been them for photographs also.
Sure.
She was
It's
there.
possible
One
that
at
it
a
was done.
time, please.
My question,
White, go ahead.
my question was asked because of the fact that Clinton did not pose, actually.
It was
a
taken from a
photograph.
photograph.
Did Hillary do that?
But he said, but he took pictures of them several times.
I know that.
But what about her?
Hillary is not
She's
mentioned
there,
here.
that's all I
It's
can
possible
say.
that he used a photograph for her too.
That's right.
Shower, you got pictures over there, kind of see.
Yeah.
It was on television
Go
now,
ahead,
you
make
didn't
it
see it.
clear.
CNN didn't happen.
There are many artists that I read about who take photographs in detail, before they even start
Yeah.
the painting with the oils, whatever they use. And they study the man while they're taking, and they converse with him, and that sort of gives you a feeling, what's inside him. What I think, especially with this particular artist, is that he had not only his own willpower to forge ahead, but he had a lot of help by chance on the way to bring him into the inner circle. Now, some people will call it other than luck. I call it just luck. He was there at the right time. He was recognized by the professor. By
But he's
the way
good,
life
he's
is.
very good.
That's the way life is,
That's how it
baby.
went up.
That's right, life is chance, yes.
Only in America. Only in America.
We applaud it very much.
Who wanted to go? Roberta,
we should finish.
Well, I'd like to say I admire Mr. Knox very much because he used his ability, and he happened to be at the right place at the right time.
Right.
It's funny.
And I'm very happy for him because he has that ability, and it's good that it's recognized.
Before this, nobody made any public.
And more than anything else, I think that this is such a boost to the Kerry campaign with the election.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the fact that a black was made to feel so important. That's right. That he actually, transcended everything, including the ceremony itself.
Chairman.
The ceremony itself is nothing particularly.
Do we have any record of any previous painters doing? Do they show
Not
this?
black.
No. I'm saying, have we ever
It must
seen?
Oh,
be.
yeah,
I have never
oh,
seen
sure,
it.
oh,
It
sure.
must be.
They televised it?
Every president.
I didn't mean that. That's not what I meant.
There must be a record, at least,
You're not listening.
Every president and wife has
Dr.
their.
Sid-
We know that.
All right?
Yeah.
But has
Somebody's
somebody
got to paint.
publicized?
Paint has shown
Photo.
how he arranged the face.
Anybody else on anything, any question at all for 3
Yes.
minutes?
The modern painter, abstract painter.
Did you want to say something?
Please,
Herbert?
Ivan, talk to me.
This is irrelevant, but we have a Dr. Ruth Gambin who takes photographs of animals, of opera stars, and he paints over them. He does a beautiful job.
Okay, very
Is
admirable.
it time?
They have that talent.
Is it time
There
to
was a
talk about?
painter in the Whitney Museum, and they took several, and they made a screening of the way he painted, and he showed, and he talked directly to the camera. And this is how I go about, and it's a giant portrait. But when you see the objects he's putting in, little piece of sculpture with different colors in it, you say it's impossible. And then you see the finished result, and it's a portrait. But when he's doing it,
It looks like nothing.
Is it time to talk about?
Yeah.
It's time to talk about the captive. Less captive. It's time to talk about the latest captive, but the Al Qaeda is keeping.
What are you
That
talking about?
guy who